Hey everyone, my name is Black Chaos, and today we'll be doing a quick summary of the Unknown 9 Out of Sight podcast. It's a series of 9 scripted podcasts that take place in the Unknown 9 story world, following Blake Elrich, who investigates strange cases in his RV, roaming around the USA with his producer Lizari. They travel around and encounter mysterious phenomenon that may or may not be linked somehow. Now, there are people who may have listened to these podcasts but don't realize that they tie into an overarching story world for Unknown 9. Now, this involves puzzles, novels, comic books, as well as the upcoming Unknown 9 Awakening game, which is set to launch soon. TM. They might not be directly related, but they do take place in the same world, so they make references to each other, probably. I am not too sure because I haven't yet completed all of them. Now, I highly recommend that you listen to these podcasts for the complete story, as I'll be only running through the main points of their journey, which introduces us to some of the aspects of the Unknown 9 story world. This is the first in a series of videos that I'll be posting based on Unknown 9, so if you're interested in this, the best way to show your support would be to drop a like or a comment, just so I know that you're enjoying them. Alright, so in the first episode of the podcast, Blake and Lizari visit an apartment building where there have been reports of a bottomless hole in the basement. The apartment residents are behaving strangely. They seem to be visiting this hole every day, like there's something that's drawing them to it. Blake talks to the property manager, Jim Clark, who says that there is no hole. So, of course, Blake goes down to check it out, where he finds the apartment folks surrounding where the hole is. He goes to look at it, and the leader of these people, Maggie, tells him that the hole speaks to her. The hole says that they're not enough because they're just 24 people and they needed 25 for some reason. That's when they start to come at Blake, who gets rescued by Lizari, who no one seems to have noticed somehow. We'll get to that later. When they're back in the RV, Blake tells Lizari that he couldn't see any hole. So a few weeks later, when Blake reaches out to Jim Clark, he finds out that the apartment residents have all disappeared, presumably down the hole, and Jim Clark is headed now to do the same thing. After this, we go to episode 2, where Blake and Lizari are going after another lead. And Uncle Trevor leaves them a message talking about his niece who has been having nightmares and is making strange art. When they visit the residence of this girl, they find out that there's a huge statue outside on their lawn, some creepy monster looking thing made of branches. Seems the girl has been making some pretty weird art, and her parents are trying to sell it, thinking that they're some art collectors. Lizari feels a strong connection with the small brass pyramid, which is one of the strange art pieces that the girl made. After this, they meet the girl's ex-boyfriend, who tells them how Lindsay, the girl, started creating miniature totems of the creepy monster thing, and these totems have been causing violent incidents around town. They end up talking to Lindsay as well, who tells them how she goes to sleep and dreams about these weird objects. After she wakes up, these objects just appear in reality somehow. They take her back to her home and find out that the giant monster totem has been lit on fire by someone. When the fire is extinguished, Lindsay tells them to get out before people start asking questions and pointing fingers. She also gives them the brass pyramid since they showed some interest in it. Also, they find out she doesn't know an Uncle Trevor. Curious. Episode 3 is where Blake visits a college campus in Illinois where an elevator supposedly takes people to another dimension. A student there tells Blake and Lizari about how there are certain rules to activate the portal. You have to be alone in the elevator as it goes from the bottom all the way to the top, and then you have to wait for an hour inside. They also tell him about a student named Edmund Mills who falls down the elevator shaft in 1915, and also a senior student named Addie who was obsessed with the elevator and went missing recently. Blake manages to follow all the instructions, and the elevator somehow travels up to a floor that doesn't exist and ends up in a dark hallway. He finds out Addie had reached this place and was trapped on this floor the whole time, but she wasn't the same person anymore. Afterwards, they're at a motel and someone leaves them an envelope outside the door marked with an insignia LYS containing a letter. Now, episode 4 goes back in time a little bit to tell us Lizari's origin story and why people seem to be forgetting about her throughout the first 3 episodes of the podcast. Turns out that she suffered from leukemia and ended up searching for ways to avoid dying. And this is how she met a man in Italy named Vincent, who performed some weird ritual process on her that made her immortal but also removed her from existing properly in this world. So, every time someone stops interacting with her directly, they forget she exists. And Blake meets her, listens to her story, somehow figures out how to remember her, and they move forward from there. After that, we proceed to a town where things and people seem to be disappearing. In episode 5, Blake and Lizari go to a town in Colorado where they find others similar to Lizari, in that the people seem to be forgetting them when they're not in their direct notice. Because of this, it looks like they just disappeared off the face of the planet somehow. After Lizari speaks to these people, she finds out that it's almost as if they're existing in a different frequency compared to the rest of the world. And occasionally, they were able to get back into tune and be seen, but it doesn't last for long. Unlike Lizari though, they aren't immortal. One of the townsfolk talks about a weird guy who came to visit the town, and mentions someone called Godric Pendergast, an old man who recently came out of a 50-year coma. 50-year coma seems weird enough, so they go to check it out in episode 6. Here they meet Godric's granddaughter, Emily, and find a satchel in her house with the same insignia, LYS, stamped on it. Seems it belonged to Godric. When they go to visit Godric, they learn that he's been ranting out of his mind about some pretty weird stuff. Stuff like ghosts that aren't dead and creatures made out of darkness. When Blake shows him the LYS letter, that triggers Godric into scribbling a number on the back of the letter, and he talks about a hotel, asking them to go find it before somebody else does. Back in the RV, turns out Lizari used her power of not being noticed by people to go and take the LYS satchel, which they open in episode 7. The satchel contains a bunch of papers that belong to Godric, and they don't really tell them much. So in the meantime, they go check out another case about a guy named Nick who lives by himself and is haunted by people he knows in the past, or something like that. They stay the night in order to find out what's going on, but they're woken up by something going through the contents of the satchel, something probably not human. Turns out it's no one, but they find a handwritten document from the satchel that talks about an artifact called the Quantum Origin Redaction Apparatus, or Quora. Godric writes about how this device can apparently erase perception and memory through a process called redaction. Sounds exactly like Lizari's condition. The document also talks about how this can theoretically be reversed. After a strange night and an even stranger bit of help, they figure out that the satchel has a hidden compartment which has a key inside it. Convenient. In episode 8, they go to Holloway Hotel in Missouri. The key they found leads to a room 2902 at this hotel, which is in an abandoned west wing of the place. The receptionist, Zeke, tells them about how a guy named Holloway built the hotel, how his daughter Rose got institutionalized for a mental illness after her mother passed away. Seems Rose now haunts the west wing of the hotel and goes around stabbing people in the eye with a rusty pair of scissors. Cute. Zeke takes them to an old filing room where he talks about how there was a shooting in 1968 where a bunch of Holloway's friends were shot by a guy in a tuxedo. He shows them an original police sketch of the guy from back in the day, and Lizari confirms that this guy is actually the Pringles guy. No, actually it's Vincent, the guy who made her immortal and also redacted. Guess he's immortal too. So Blake and Lizari sneak off to go to room 2902 where they find Godric's journal. In this journal, he talks about the Leap Year Society, or LYS, a group of scholars and scientists with the common goal to seek out the unknown. Godric and his team found the Quora, and seems LYS were divided on whether to study it or leave it alone. Godric wanted to study it, which is probably why Vincent seems so interested in offing him and his friends. Now at this exact same time, Blake receives a call from Emily, Godric's granddaughter, who says that Godric was shot in the hospital after some guy forced him to give up some random numbers. These numbers were most likely the same numbers that Godric scribbled on Blake's letter, and obviously they turn out to be coordinates. These coordinates lead them straight to a settlement called Stoll in Kansas that is known for a graveyard that just happens to have a gateway to hell. Interestingly enough, this seems to be an actual legend that is referenced in pop culture like the TV show Supernatural. In episode 9, which is the season finale, they head to Stoll where they unlock the gateway to hell using the bronze pyramid. They find a stone staircase which leads them down to a huge chasm where there's a platform with a small chest on top of it. The chest contains a lens that can be used to reverse the effects of the Korra. And this is where Vincent comes strolling in, holding the Korra and threatening to redact Blake unless they hand him the lens. A small kerfuffle takes place during which Lizari is hit with the Korra and her redaction is cured. Then LYS shows up in the nick of time to save them, Vincent jumps into the cavern and disappears, and the Korra is returned to LYS. Blake and Lizari are then invited to join the Leap Year Society in return for answers to all the questions that they have. And that's where it ends, for now. There are a lot of details that I missed out, some on purpose, because they're best experienced as part of the podcast itself. Again, I highly recommend that you do check out the podcast. The link to it is in the description below. The podcast is really well made and honestly, very creepy. I enjoyed it though. I'll be posting another video soon where we'll be diving into how to solve the web puzzles for Unknown 9 chapters, which might give us more details about this mysterious world. And it'll be something to look forward to in the lead up to more information about the game Unknown 9 Awakening. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And I'll be back again for the next one.